Hello, welcome back. My name is Ari, and today I want to talk about a personalized book subscription that I received for 6 months from a independent bookstore in Michigan called Brilliant Books. Now, how this book box works is you can sign up for like a ton of different subscription options, 6 months to a year, paperbacks or hardbacks, and then from there you can get like adult books, young adult books, nonfiction books, children's books. The list goes on and on. There's a lot of them, and your pricing depends on what of those options you chose. For me specifically, and what I'm talking about today, I did a 6-month subscription to adult paperback books. And then once you figure all of that out, then you fill out a questionnaire and they get like the nitty-gritty of the type of books that you enjoy reading so they can personalize the subscription box to you. The subscription box comes with absolutely nothing but the book. There's no swag. It's just one book a month for your allotted time of months. So 6 months for me. Now, let's say the book they send you is something that you hate, you have no interest in reading, you take one look at it and go like, this isn't for me. Or maybe it's something you've already read. Then you just email them and say, hey, I don't want this book. They send you a replacement book and then you mail the book that you don't want back. So very straightforward. They're very, very good about that. So first, I am going to go into all of the books that they sent me over this 6-month period of time. And then I'm going to give you like my overall thoughts on what I think of the subscription. Over 6 months, they ended up sending me 8 books because I sent 2 of them back. These are 7 of the 8 books. The other one is a ebook that I already owned and sent back. But what I did is I did read all 8 of these books. Most of them I had read before this month, but 3 of them I read this month. So I'm gonna go in order of how I received the books, my thoughts about like what's going on, and all of that fun stuff. Before I talk about the books, though, I do want to let you know what I put on my questionnaire. Basically, I said I like fantasy books. Send me fantasy books. I want to read fantasy books. Do not send me anything really popular because I probably already read it. Do not send me anything that has won an award or been nominated for an award because I've probably already read it. And here is my Goodreads link. Please look at my Goodreads link before you send me anything to see if I've already read the book or if I already own a book, because I keep up with my Goodreads very frequently. So, I'm just gonna tell you right now, they didn't look at my Goodreads, ever. The first book they sent me was Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, and this is a very easy book to describe. This book is about lesbian necromancers exploring a haunted mansion in space. This book, you might notice, is a hardback, not a paperback, right? That's because I already own this book. This is my favorite book of last year, 5 stars. I absolutely loved this book. So the first book they sent me, they did a really, really good job, right? I mean, except for the fact that this was nominated and won multiple awards and it was already on my Goodreads and they ignored that. But as far as just like blindly guessing what book I would like, good job, good job. I emailed them and said, hey, you did a great job of picking this book. This is my favorite book of the year so far, but I already own a couple copies of it. I don't need a paperback copy of it. And when I asked for a replacement on this, I specifically requested a book, which you can do, provided that it is like available in paperback. Because if you like request something that's a new release and it's only available in hardback, but you paid for the paperbacks, they're not going to send you it. But I specifically requested My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, and I did say that I only want this book if it has the really cool VHS cover. So I wanted this book simply for the cover. I didn't know anything about it. I had never read anything by Grady Hendrix. I just really liked the cover of this book, and so I wanted the book for the cover. And the paperback is the only one that comes with this VHS cover. The hardback looks differently. So specifically requested this book. Now, I read this book this month. So at the time, I hadn't read the book, I didn't know anything about it, but I have read this book now. This is also a 5-star book. And this is about two best friends in Charleston, South Carolina in the early 1980s. And they're dropping acid and one of the girls vanishes into the marsh because she stupidly decides that she's going to go swimming during low tide, and kind of jumps off a dock, falls a lot farther than she expected to because it's low tide, and gets kind of swept up in the mud and everything, and she vanishes. And her girlfriends spend hours looking for her, like walking through the marsh in the woods nearby where she went into the water, and just trying to find like where this girl went. And almost a day later, they end up finding her wandering around by this like electrical concrete building, completely naked except for her tennis shoes, and she seems dazed and confused and not really sure what's going on. And then after that day, she is like, her entire personality is changed. So there's a question of, is she possessed? Or is she like suffering PTSD from a traumatic experience that she had that night that I'm not going to go into because that's spoilery. From there, we're going to say that the booksellers for Brilliant Books are looking at these two books and determining what my book taste is solely off these two books. They are a very, very small sample size because I told them I liked this and then I requested this one. So this is the sample size they're going for. They're not going off of Goodreads and looking at a sample size. They're just taking these two books as a sample size. So what does this tell them? This is a fantasy with horror aspects, and this is a horror with fantastical aspects. So fantasy horror is what they're getting from this mainly. So you're gonna see a lot of fantasy horror books in here. Also female main characters with like a sapphic kind of thing going on. So this is like lesbian necromancers. Like these women are openly gay. These girls are not really, like, they're pretty straight. In the 80s when being queer is not accepted at all, but there is a strong sense of these two girls, each other is more important than any man ever. So lightly sapphic on here, strongly sapphic on here. The other thing that you get from these are both really fucking weird. So those are the three categories we're really gonna see a lot with the rest of these books is fantasy horror, sapphic or queer relationships, and weird. Now, what do I like out of those? I like books about queer relationships. That's the only one they got right. I don't have a like particular attachment to fantasy horror. I don't like either one of these for the horror elements. I like this one for Gideon's personality. She is an unlikable female character and she just wants to look at titty magazines and swing her broadsword around. This one I like for the subject matter and because it's set in Charleston, South Carolina. And Grady Hendrix is just really good at characterizations. So neither one of these I like because of the fantasy horror aspects. Even though I don't have anything against fantasy horror, it's just not one of those genres where I'm like, I love reading fantasy horrors. Like I would say maybe about fantasy romance. I love fantasy romance. Fantasy horror, not the genre I would pick for myself. The other thing is weird books. So I am very picky about weird books. There's some weird books that I really, really like and some that I really, really don't like. These are two that I really, really like, but you're gonna see quite a few in here that I really don't like. So, with that in mind, let's move into what else they sent me. So for month 2, they sent me a book called The Remaking, and this book is about like the retelling of a haunting story in the 1930s. 2 women, a mother and a daughter, are burned at the stake for being witches. In the 1950s, their story is being retold around a campfire. In the 1970s, their story is made into a movie, and the movie set is kind of haunted. Then in the 1990s, the movie from the 1970s is remade because remakes were very, very popular in the 90s. And in 2010s, the story of the hauntings plus all of the problems with the movies are being told in a podcast. So you kind of get is like, what's the major source of media consumption throughout different decades from the 1930s to the into the 2010, right? So I kind of get from first glance why they sent this to me. It looks like a movie cover, right? So you got movie cover vibes, like it makes sense that, hey, you like this one, maybe you'll like this one too. I didn't particularly like this one. The ghost story itself is pretty cool. Like, I wasn't mad about the ghost story, but it was repetitive. Like, that makes sense. It's literally every 20 years telling this exact same story over again, and I didn't care. After about the 1970s, I was like, yes, I get it. I don't care. So, not my favorite. I think I ended up giving this 3 stars because it wasn't, like, horrible. Like, I didn't hate it or anything. It's just like, okay, that was a book. I'm never gonna read it again. I don't particularly care about it anymore, but not the worst thing. And I understand why they sent it to me. As far as, like, it's weird, so it fits the weird. As far as, like, the sapphic thing, it doesn't really have a queer romance. The the podcast person in the 2010s is a queer black man, but they are not, like, that section is like the smallest section in the book, so not really a featured part of the book, but everybody else is kind of straight. So this one's missing the queer aspect but fits the other 2, where it's fantasy horror, or horror with fantasy aspects, and weird. The next month they sent me a book called Yellow Jessamine, and this one, when I first got it, pissed me off a little bit because it's a novella. Like, I paid a lot of money for this box. I don't want novellas. But I was like, okay, 1 book out of 6 books is a novella. I'll accept it. Fine. Okay. Surprising no one, this is a horror fantasy, and this one's extra weird. This one's like one of the weirder ones in the book, but it's basically a noblewoman. She like owns a shipping franchise, I guess, in a dying city that is being what is the word I'm looking for? A dying city under siege. Like, this is like the last bastion of a country that is falling in a war, and the city is under siege, and these wealthy people are losing all of their monies because they can't ship anything because they're under siege. So there's a mysterious sickness, and this woman is obsessed with death because she has lost everyone in her family over her fairly short life. And it's all together like really, really weird. I didn't particularly like this at all. This is the weird that I don't like. So we've got the horror fantasy, we got the weird, there's also a sapphic relationship in this. She is in love with her maid. So there is a sapphic relationship in here. It's a thing. Overall, very disappointed with this pick, but I understand, it's like, it fits the theme that they've been sending me, so I get it. Next up, they sent me a book called Silver in the Woods, which was another novella. And at this point I'm pissed, because 2 novellas back to back when I am paying for full priced books is kind of bullshit. I also already own this, which is why you're getting a picture over here, because I got this for free from Tor.com, because Tor.com gave it out free that month. Anyway, this is like I want to say it's a fairy tale retelling, but it's not retelling anything. It's its own fairy tale, but it's told in a way that is very fairy tale-like. And in this book, there is an old, like a crazy old man in the woods named Tobias, I believe is his name. And he is a reclusive, he's like the scary old guy in the woods that all like the children and the townspeople are afraid of, and a very happy-go-lucky friendly young man named, whose last name is Silver, I can't remember his first name. He buys the mansion that this wood is like, or I guess he buys the grounds. There's a mansion and all of the like land where this wood is. And he is traveling to his home into like a really big rainstorm, and Tobias sees him out the window and asks him to come in. And these 2 men form like a unlikely friendship. Silver is like a huge flirt and is constantly trying to sleep with Tobias, and Tobias is just like whoosh, doesn't get it at all. And but neither man is really what he seems. This is really hard to describe because it's only like 112 pages. It's a very, very short book. So I loved this book. I gave this 4 stars. This is the kind of weird that I like. And so this one, we definitely got the weird. We've gotten fantasy, but there are horror aspects to this. There is a haunting aspect in this book. So it is, fantasy with a little bit of horror instead of like the horror with a little bit of fantasy that we've been seeing in the, most of the other books so far. And instead of a sapphic relationship, this is a male-male gay relationship in this one. So it still hits all 3 of those things. And this one is one that I actually like, but it's one that I already owned. So I know my own taste, apparently. And when they match my own taste to books that I've already seen or heard of, they're doing really good. When they're giving me books that I've never heard of is when they're not doing very well. And this trend will kind of continue. So I emailed them, asked them to send it back, mailed it back, all of that fun stuff. And the replacement they sent me was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and I had already read this book. I decided to keep this because I do want to continue on with this series as Leigh Bardugo releases it, and I had originally borrowed it from my library. So even though I had the option to send it back again, I decided to keep it just because I was done with like asking them over and over again to fucking check my Goodreads. Please check my Goodreads and see what I've already read. So this one is about, it's fantasy horror again, with a lot of dark academia vibes to it. This is about a girl named Alex who is a freshman at Yale, and she is part of like the Yale's underground, what do they call it? Yale secret societies. And her job in the Yale secret society is basically to see ghosts, because she's like a poor, like she doesn't fit in with Yale at all, but she can see ghosts. So she was accepted into Yale and initiated as part of like this policing secret society that polices all the other secret societies, just because she can see ghosts, because the power of the rich people who go to Yale and join secret societies has a lot to do with ghosts. It's kind of confusing. That was a really bad summary, but you get the idea. Anyway, this one I gave 3 stars, and I enjoyed it enough that I want to continue on with the series, but not one of my favorite books at all. There's a lot of problems with this book. A couple of scenes in here that are heavily trigger warnings, so if you're interested in this, definitely look up trigger warnings. Anyway, as far as the other points, so we definitely have fantasy horror in here, because fantasy secret societies, but also sees ghosts. Weird, yeah, this is pretty weird. And then sapphic relationship. This one does not have a sapphic relationship, but it goes back to the parallels in this one, where there are 2 girlfriends in this book who would die for each other, where their friendship is stronger than any relationship they're ever going to have with a man. So not really a sapphic relationship, but definitely a very close female friendship. The next month, they sent me this book called The Seep, and this one is by far the weirdest fucking book that they sent me. This is fantasy with a lot of body horror in it. Actually, it's sci-fi with body horror. This is way more sci-fi than fantasy because this is about aliens. Aliens have invaded Earth, and aliens are like a microorganism that you drink in your water, and you gain the ability to change anything. Like, you want feathers, you just think about it and you can grow feathers. You want to turn into you're a woman and you want to be a man, you can do it. You need a 3rd arm growing out of your shoulder because you need like extra arms to grab things. Done. Easy. No problems. There are no physics left. You can fly if you want to. Anything like that. So the main character, Trina, her wife has decided that she wants to start over in life, and she is going to become an infant, and she is going to choose to go back to a fetus state, insert herself into another woman's body, lose all of her memories, and be reborn and start life over again. Which, yes, that is as weird as it sounds. And Trina is not dealing with her wife's choice of that very well, because they've been together for like 40 years, and she feels very abandoned by her wife for making this choice. And this just kind of follows Trina dealing with her depression after her wife's choice. So weird, sci-fi horror instead of fantasy horror, but close enough. And then another sapphic relationship, because both are women. One of them is trans, but I don't remember which one, so there is trans rep in here. There's actually quite a bit of rep in here. There's rep for older characters. Both of these characters are in their like 50s or 60s, so that's not something you see a whole lot in books either. So I just hated this because it was weird. It was so weird. I didn't understand what was going on. I wasn't sure why I was supposed to care. I'm not a fan of alien invasion, honestly, but the cover of this one is really, really pretty, so I do like that one. And then the final book that they sent me was... This one is kind of like different from all of this one. First off, this is a very colorful cover, which we haven't seen quite yet. All the other covers are like dark black. This is just sci-fi. There's no horror aspects to this, I guess. Unless you consider like consumerism horrific, which kind of it is. But this takes place in Auto-America. This is basically a ripoff of George Orwell's 1984, where a computer program named Aunt Nettie is basically the same thing as Big Brother, and society is divided into the netted and the consumers? That's not right. Surplus. The netted and the surplus. So surplus are basically black and brown people, minorities of any kind, people who aren't white, and they don't have jobs anymore because computers have replaced them, and so they're kind of useless. They live in swamps and on river boats. They're killed off pretty frequently, experimented on, all this horrible stuff, but the only way they can live is they have to consume. So the netted are the white people, and they produce, they have jobs, but capitalist society is all about production, and so everything is overproduced. So the surplus, in order to, like, their job is to consume, and they earn like living points based on the amount of consumption that they do. It's weird. This definitely fits into this weird category. I hated it. Oh, also, I guess I should say the main character in this book is Gwen, and Gwen is a baseball prodigy. So this is like about baseball and consumerism, and I hate baseball. I looked at this and I was like, I really should send this back because I know I am not going to like this. I do not want to read anything sci-fi about fucking baseball. But it was the last book that I had, and I was like, okay, I'm trying to do this organically. I'm trying to give them as like give them the base info and then let them go from there. So I hated this. This one also didn't have a queer relationship per se, but it did have that very, very close female friendship in here. The two girls aren't as close as in the other books. They wouldn't like die for each other, but it is a lifelong female friendship. So did have that aspect to it. From here, I am going to rant a little bit, and I do want to preface this with the fact that at any time I could have emailed them and been like, stop sending me fantasy horror. Like, I hate these books. I could have sent any of these books back and just been like, this is not for me, this is not what I'm asking for, like, really, please look at my Goodreads, or told them, like, I want this specific book. Like, you're doing a really shitty job of picking out books for me, I'm picking out books for me to get my money's worth on this. At any time I could have done that. They were very receptive, very responsive, very good about any changes that I need. I wanted to do this organically with like minimal feedback other than the initial feedback. So a lot of the problems with my experience are my own problems that I could have easily fixed. So just want to put that out there before I continue my ranting. But yeah, they just made assumption based off of 2 books and went with that, and it wasn't what I would have picked out for myself at all. The other problem that I have is the price. So I paid $115 for this for 6 months of paperback books, right? And in my opinion, if I'm going to be surprised by a book, I'm not choosing them for myself, I should pay less money than the value of the books, right? So adding up the totals of the books I kept, I took out Gideon the Ninth, and I took out Silver in the Woods because I didn't keep those, so I'm not getting those value out of that. The total of the books was $93.91. And I went to their website, they're a bookstore, I went to their website and looked at what they sold those books for. So this isn't like what the recommended price on the box or on the book itself is, it's what they were selling it for. And that is $21.09 less than what I paid. Now, I did not factor tax in there, so a lot of that $20 is going to be eaten up by tax, or at least like $10-ish of that $20 is going to be eaten up by tax. And then, of course, like, I'm supporting a small bookstore and shipping costs and stuff like that, but because I am not picking out these books for myself, shouldn't I pay less than what the books are worth, not more? So I think this book box would have been set like $100 is a better price range for this book box than the $115 that I ended up paying for it. Especially if you're gonna continuously send me novellas. Like, who wants to pay full price for a freaking novella? Especially when you read like 20 to 30 books a month. Like, I don't want to pay full price for a novella. Miss me with that. Anyway, so do I think this is worth it? No, obviously not. If you want to do this, I mean, like, I don't mind supporting a book, independent bookstore or anything like that, but I think unless you're just looking to support them, then, and you're trying to actually get books that you want, just go to an independent bookstore, tell a bookseller, like, hey, this is what I'm interested in, can you recommend a book? And then buy it that way. This one is just, it's not worth it. So, like, I told them things that they just never took into consideration. Going to my Goodreads, looking at my to be read, because I have a TBR list and I have a TBR owned list. Look at my TBR, books I don't own, send me 6 books off of that and you're done. Like, I've done all the work for you there. And you're not like giving me books that I don't want at all. So there's that. I think that pretty much covers it. Like I said, I'm not like, I'm being overly dramatic for the video. I'm not actually mad that they sent me these books. Like, I knew going into this that I was going to pay more than the value of the books. And I knew that I wasn't going to give proper feedback. Like, if you're going to do something like this, give them feedback. Tell them you don't like these books. Like, don't be like me. I'm doing this for the content, not to get books that I actually want to read. So all those disclaimers there. I know there is a book box called Page One that is almost exactly like this, except for when they send you a book and you don't like it, you keep it and they just send you a replacement book and then they tell you to donate it to a good home. I'm considering signing up for that. Let me know down in the comments if you would like to see, maybe in like 6 months or next year sometime, me doing this video again, but about Page One, and then I can compare this company to Page One and see like, hey, maybe that's more worth it, or hey, maybe this one is actually more worth it and Page One is super hyped and it shouldn't be. Whatever. So let me know if that sounds interesting to you guys down in the comments. If it doesn't, then let me know that too. Like, stop wasting your money, Ari, is also a proper response that you could give me down in the comments. Anyway, I think that's it for today. Let me know what you thought about any of these books. Let me know if you put any of these books on your TBR based off of like what I was talking about. I will have Goodreads links to all of these down in the description if you were interested in finding out more. I did review all of these, even though I didn't like really super talk about them in this video. I have read all of them, reviewed all of them at different points of time on Goodreads, so you can see them there. But I will catch you next week when I go over a young adult book box and read some books from that. But I'll see you then. Bye!